government want to ban Palestine Action, and they want to prescribe them, basically put them on the list of terrorist groups. Why? Because they broke into an RAF, a Royal Air Force base, last week, and then they basically sprayed paint on a plane. I think, if I'm not mistaken, it was for air refueling. So, and we know, as a matter of fact, that the United Kingdom is sending planes and has sent planes to sustain and aid the Israeli genocide in Gaza, and also now this assault on Iran. And I played you David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, earlier, just making the case for war as the top diplomat, right? Which is something maybe the defense minister should be doing. But anyway, a lot of people came out today to protest this because of how wild it is, and a lot of people actually. You should understand that Palestine Action. When I was arrested under the Terrorism Act, on that day, they had a couple of members who had done an action at Filton. So they were dismantling Israeli weapons factories in the UK, right? It's a form of protest. They didn't invent it, right? But they're the ones doing it now during this genocide. And this has been done during the Iraq War. As a matter of fact, Keir Starmer was defending people doing this during the Iraq War, which is really funny because his government now wants to ban people doing the exact same thing, right? Which goes to show you how he lies about everything and flip-flops back and forth like a typical politician. Actually, more than a usual politician. But they when I was arrested, they had actionists in prison that had been held, I think it was 100 hours at that point, without charges, which is a violation of not just their human rights, but it's a cornerstone of English law that you are either charged after being arrested within 24 hours, or you are allowed to walk out the door. You can't just hold someone and suspend their rights for no reason. Yeah, that's been a cornerstone of English law for centuries. And the Terrorism Act takes that away. When I was arrested, they told me I can't talk to my family, I can't tell anyone that I've been arrested, I can't even call a lawyer. I have to get them to call a lawyer and then wait for them to call me back. They said I have the right to know why I've been arrested, and then wouldn't explain why I've been arrested. All my rights were gone. And they barely gave me any water, and they were filming me the 24 hours in that cell, no toilet paper. I mean, it's insane, yeah? So just to give you an idea that this group, Palestine Action, they've been facing these assaults under the terrorism legislation that we have in the UK, and now it's really escalated to another level. And think of how demented this government is, because they happily provide intelligence to the Israelis to murder children, to murder civilians, to carry out a genocide. They happily provide weapons, right? Not just these RAF flights, but they give and manufacture weapons in the UK and then ship them to the Israelis. And they do this via the base, RAF base in Cyprus. So, it's not, they're complicit. No, they are a belligerent. They're an active participant. They are committing genocide, okay? It's not Israel by itself. Israel can't do shit by itself. That's why it needs to silence people like me, why it attacks people like Palestine Action, why it needs weapons from the West and political and diplomatic and media cover, because it ain't shit without the West. It cannot survive without the West. Right? That's why they bother silencing anyone who criticizes Zionism, because then if we criticize Zionism and expose them, their life support gets cut off, and they think that they have a right to be on someone else's land and kill children and do whatever they want, no matter the cost. That I pay, or someone in Palestine Action pays, or someone in Gaza pays, which is considerably much more, because they're paying with their lives. They think everything is justified, right? And you should look at the people in government and the money that they've received from Israel. You look at who has the decision now to prescribe Palestine Action, the Home Secretary, and look how much money she's received from Israel, right? So these Israeli lobbyists, right, that bankroll the Labour Party, they've given her £215,000. Now, honestly, if you're going to sell your country out and support genocide, I think I'd be charging a bit more than £215,000. That seems a bit cheap, honestly, for to risk a war crimes tribunal. But anyway, I'm just reading the figures. So all of them, right? So she's the Home Secretary. Then the Prime Minister on the left, he's taken £50,000. I think. He called himself a Zionist without qualification, and his wife is a Jewish Zionist, I think, as well. So he doesn't need to be paid off. And David Lammy has taken £100,000. So he's the Foreign Secretary that I was just talking to you about. Culture Secretary, Education Secretary, and the Chancellor, they've all taken, tens of thousands of pounds. And Reeves has taken 100,000 from these pro-Israel lobbyists. So at best, in the best case scenario, this poses a conflict of interest. right? If they haven't been bought off, it's at the very least a conflict of interest. I frankly, I don't really put much stock, or rather take much stock from these things, because for me, it's not about money. Money is like, it's too easy of an explanation. I think some of them are really ideologically Zionist and neoconservative. I think they like war and murdering people. I don't think that it's always about money, but that's a different story. I'm just giving you the facts, okay? These are facts. They've taken this money, and you know, there is a conflict of interest here. She might ban a group that, you know, she's taken money from Israeli lobbyists and now wants to ban a group that is cutting off arms to Israel to prevent war crimes. Something is off here, yeah? I'll show you today. There was a protest, and the police actually, you know, they're supposed to be impartial, right? So look what they did. They're very clever. There was supposed to be a protest today in front of Parliament to stop the government from prescribing Palestine Action, and then the police set up an exclusion zone. Basically, they banned the protest from taking place in front of Parliament, and then moved it to Trafalgar Square, right? And it was a massive thing. It was a massive thing. I'm just going to show you like 2 seconds or whatever, but they really kind of assaulted people like crazy, right? What is that war cry? Like, does this guy think he's in Full Metal Jacket or something? What a completely nuts and out of order. I mean, that is out of order, seriously. It's like a hooligan in uniform. Okay, just you get the idea, yeah? I think this is just absolutely insane. And I wish they would invest this much energy and rage into, you know, the fucking child killers and murderers and war criminals that they have shielded many times, by the way, right? So sometimes in the past, I'm not talking about the last year and a half, I'm talking about like 10 years ago. Some Israeli official will be flying to the UK for one reason or another, maybe dropping off a suitcase of money or you know, an Epstein tape. And then they would kind of forewarn them that, oh, this group or this NGO or these lawyers have actually put in a request to, you know, or filed a complaint for war crimes, and we're probably going to have to arrest you. And then they would notify and give these Israelis advance notice of that pending warrant. I wish someone fucking told me I was going to be arrested, but no one, you know, I wasn't afforded that luxury. Apparently, I'm not one of the chosen people. But it just goes to show you how complicit the government are, like how they not only supply them with these things, but they then try to shield them from legal consequences, and they don't even uphold English law and international law, you know, for the sake of helping them commit war crimes. And remember, Gaza's been attacked and invaded many times. These don't just relate to Gaza. But my point is just that the police are getting so outraged at a bunch of people exercising the democratic rights to protest. Yeah, right. We're not, what are we, Russia or Iran? Right? I thought we have the right to protest, and we have free speech and free press and all these nice things, yeah? But they don't seem to have any of that kind of, you know, bravado or attitude when it comes to Israeli child killers, right? You know, I haven't heard of a single IDF dual citizen who's gone and taken part, literally, you know, held a gun and fired and committed war crimes and killed people in Gaza, being arrested, even just questioned or detained upon return to the UK. Have you? I haven't. I don't know of a single example. And there are thousands, that's a fact, of UK citizens that have taken part in this genocide. So you tell me what's up with that. Absolute madness. And I just want you to understand that this list, okay, of prescribed groups that they're going to put Palestine Action, or that they're trying to put them on, is the same list that has Al-Qaeda, for example. So you're going to tell me that spraying paint inside of an engine is the same as, you know, chopping people's heads off? Are you fucking serious? And then on top of it, the foreign secretary, yeah, that's this guy right here, okay, on the top right, goes and meets with Al-Qaeda in Syria, and the former head of MI6 goes on Sky News and calls them resistance fighters. And, you know, the Telegraph and the Daily Mail and other UK outlets call them, I forgot what the term they used was, but they basically like try to whitewash them. They said they're like human rights jihadists or some, I forget the name, some bollocks. The point is being that, you know, the law, technically they broke the law, but nothing happened to them, which goes to show you how this list of terrorist groups or the Terrorism Act is really just a bunch of BS. I mean, obviously they violate it all the time when it suits them, and the really criteria here is not the violence or the political orientation. It's just it's solely focused and centered on Zionism. It's, do you support Israel? If the answer is yes, it doesn't make any difference if you're on this list. You might be officially a terrorist, like Jolani is, and I should just underscore the fact that his group, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, doesn't even have its own listing on this list. It's listed directly under Al-Qaeda because the UK government considers them so intertwined. There is no point even giving them their own slot on that list. They are under Al-Qaeda, okay? So they are Al-Qaeda. Obviously, you can be on this list. You can be a former commander of ISIS, of Al-Qaeda, and the UK government will give you sanctions relief. They'll give you intelligence, and they'll reestablish diplomatic ties, and the foreign secretary and his diplomats will go and visit you and coddle you because you support Israel, because you let Israel steal land in Syria, you let Israel bomb Syria's weapons depots and navy and air force, and you don't pose any kind of threat to Zionism. That's the only criteria. But if you spray some paint at a plane that was going to be used to bomb Iran or bomb Palestinians, you're a fucking terrorist. Square that circle for me, will you? Something very off about these people. I mean, it makes 1984 look normal. Like, it really does, yeah?
The question, you just brought up the RAF there, and I just want to gauge your opinion on what happened at RAF Brize Norton with this Palestine Action group. What do you think should happen to the people who broke in to the air station and spread those airplanes?
I mean, this is completely unacceptable behaviour. Not only is it criminal to invade a RAF base, it's also a threat to our national security. That's why we've immediately instigated a review of the security measures at RAF Brize Norton, but also at every other UK military base across the country. And we're working closely with counter-terrorism police to identify those people that were involved in this action. Not only is it epically stupid to criminally trespass on a military base at a time of heightened tensions, it's a threat to our national security to vandalise and attack those military aircraft, because it's precisely planes like the ones that they vandalise that have been taking aid to Gaza, that have been supporting peace in the Middle East. It's RAF.
Yeah, you mean that aid that was dropped randomly and even crushed people upon descent? That aid? What aid? The aid being distributed at these traps where they have people queue up and then Israeli tanks fire at them? That fucking aid? I mean, what a wanker, honestly. Look, this is very simple for me. Yeah, this is very simple. He calls this an invasion, but it's actually the UK that's invading other countries through the RAF. It's the UK that's using these tools, this military equipment, for criminal behavior, because yes, genocide is criminal. It's criminal on an international scale, and it's illegal even under the UK's own laws, because all these treaties have to be adopted and they have equivalents drawn up under English common law. So it's not just like an international obligation. Even under the UK's own law, these things are criminal, right? What he and his cabinet members, his colleagues, are doing is criminal. It's criminal behavior on a massive, massive scale. This guy is a killer. He kills people. He kills children. He is a murderer. Do you understand that? And he's calling other people terrorists. I mean, the fucking nerve of this planet, of this world, is unbelievable. When my grandfather was in the Royal Air Force in World War II, they used to bomb, they used to fight, they used to, work against Nazis, right? Today's RAF doesn't do that. Today's RAF helps Nazis, and that's why Palestine Action had to intervene. And I've spoken to other people whose family also served in World War II, in the British Army during World War II, and we came to the conclusion that what these people are doing right now, like him, they're sullying, they're basically insulting and spitting on the memory of people that actually fought against fascism and against Nazism and against tyranny during World War II. They've completely changed the direction, the spirit, the mission, all of this stuff. They, as a matter of fact, they've exploited what happened in World War II as the basis for all of the so-called rules-based order and the domination of the planet that we see by the Anglo sphere, right? So that's the Five Eyes, the United States, and so on. That's been used as the basis for that. So actually from day one, as soon as World War II ended, and even just before, they were already planning to screw with the Russians and all this stuff. So all of that fighting against fascism and fighting against tyranny turned out to be for nothing, because they became the tyrants themselves. You understand what I'm saying? And they're committing genocide now with these tools, and then acting like, spraying some paint is more criminal than murdering people. I don't know what dimension you come from, but the one that I am in, murdering people, human life, taking life, is a bigger issue and problem and more criminal than destroying a piece of equipment or technical gear which can be replaced. You can't bring people back from the dead, can you? I mean, the nerve of these motherfuckers, it's so typical of them to put property and capital above human life, right? It's so typical. It's like almost comical, right? I think this would qualify as a sketch in the 1970s, but not that the 1970s were any better, but just I feel like back then people would have said, oh, this would be impossible. And what we're seeing today is actually just it's off the charts kind of 1984 level stuff. This is one of the mothers of the Filton 18. So again, when I was arrested on August 15th. Yeah, I think the Filton 10 were in prison at that point for 100 hours, and then they arrested another 8 afterwards. This is one of the mums talking to Declassified. So her daughter is in prison currently for trying to stop war crimes and genocide. This is what she had to say.
Statement says, I have decided to proscribe Palestine Action under Section 3 of the Terrorism Act 2020. A draft prescription order will be laid in Parliament on Monday the 30th of June. If passed, it will make it illegal to be a member of or invite support for Palestine Action. I'm close to tears. I'm speechless. I mean, we saw this coming, but this is a gut punch of the highest order. It's how can they criminalise the people who are speaking out against the government's criminal actions? To put Palestine Action in the same category as ISIS or Boko Haram, what is this country coming to? These people are not harming human beings. They're spraying red paint, or they're using tools to decommission weapons being used in a genocide. How is that terrorism? It's hypocritical and it's disgusting. Our government are supporting a terrorist state. They are the ones committing terrorism.
Yeah.
We've got a real dilemma. So there's the Filton 18, there's a big group of us, family and friends, supporting. We've been raising our voices for a long time now and coming together in support. We don't know what we can say now. We don't know if we can lobby and advocate for our loved ones, which should be completely legitimate. And now we're in a position where if we continue to raise our voices, we could be given prison sentences.
Yeah, I was just about to raise that point, that if she starts campaigning for her, or not starts, but continues campaigning for her daughter once that prescription comes into effect, if it does indeed, then she might be sent to prison, right? Because they arrested me under Section 12, and you know how loose that language is. It's I mean, to do it to a journalist is madness. To do it to anyone is madness, and then to do it to a journalist is even more mad because it criminalizes speech. You get my point? Like my job is literally to speak. So if you're criminalizing speech, you're basically saying we don't want a free press, and you're criminalizing this mum saying I want to free my daughter, because then they'll say, well, you're supporting a member of a terrorist organization, go to prison. Do you see how crazy and dystopian this law is? Don't get me wrong. There are parts of the Terrorism Act, very small ones, that are rational, that a country needs for national security. But we all know, and I know, that that's not what that law is in place for. As a matter of fact, it existed decades ago to oppress the Irish when the British were occupying, well, they're still occupying Northern Ireland, but when there were more troops there. That was the Prevention of Terrorism Act, I think it was called. And then they made it even more draconian in the year 2000. And then they added some more things in 2019 and 2020, to support this war on terror or war of terror. So, it's just unchecked government power. And just so you understand, the government makes this decision on what group to prescribe. And as you can see, they don't even adhere to the bloody list. I mean, they're meeting with Al-Qaeda in Syria, and Al-Qaeda's prescribed. How do you explain that? How is that not illegal? How is that not illegal? And how do you then equate journalism or spraying paint with terrorism, with people who chop heads off and blow up churches and blow up mosques? How do you dare even to think that, never mind to say it out loud and then try and pass legislation and send agents of the state to arrest people. I mean, the fucking nerve, honestly. These people are scumbags. And I guess we should expect that because they murder children for a living. So, you know, what was to be expected of them? Is this really unbecoming of them? Hardly, is it? These people literally kill for a living. They murder every single day. They are killers, stone cold killers. That's what they are. And, you know, they're offended by a bit of paint in an engine. Well, then don't use the engine to kill people and there won't be any paint if that's your predicament. Yes? It's very simple.